end, it used to be death and now it's divorce. Nevertheless, what that means is that children are being raised in different kinds of families. And again, the increase of divorce raises questions. You can ask questions about how these changes in family structure are actually influencing the way that children grow up. Now, the story in particular about the effects of divorce is a somewhat complicated one. So there's quite a lot of evidence that, especially during divorces itself, that divorces are really difficult for children. And during divorces, children are more likely to suffer from all sorts of emotional and social adjustment problems than children who simply stay with their biological parents. Nevertheless, if you look long-term, it's the story that we've heard again and again in the class about risk and resilience. Long-term, most of the children of divorces come out perfectly fine. So there isn't any evidence for long-term, permanent, very general effects on children of divorce. Although there is some evidence that children of divorce are somewhat more at risk for some kinds of social and emotional problems than children who don't come from divorced families. But remember that we always have this problem when we're trying to interpret data like this. We always have this problem of cause and correlation. So we can't actually go out and say, all right, we're going to randomly choose half of the children and half of the couples in America and tell them, now you're going to get a divorce, and the other half are going to stay together, right? So one of the things that we don't really know is it that the children of divorce are showing these difficulties because of the divorce, or is it that marriages that end up being divorced are different from marriages that don't end up in divorce for various reasons, and that it's those factors that actually lead to the divorce that are independently leading to the problems for children? And in fact, there is some evidence that this is the case. So if you look at, sorry, let me go back. I'll go back to this. In fact, if you look at ongoing marital conflict, so you look at couples who stay together but hate each other, then that has negative effects on children's social and emotional development too. And in fact, it has negative effects that are fairly parallel to the negative effects of divorce. So the thing that seems to be causing the trouble with divorce is having high levels of parental conflict. And of course, that independently makes people more likely to divorce, but it also independently makes the children have social and emotional problems. Is that right? So it doesn't seem to be so much that the divorce itself is what's causing the trouble. What's causing the trouble is the conflict between parents, which leads to the divorce, which leads to the negative outcome. And if you look at the factors that are actually affecting the impact of divorce, that fits this picture, because the thing that seems to be the biggest predictor of whether or not divorce will have a negative impact on the children is, in fact, how much parental conflict there is. So the more parental conflict there is before, during, or after a divorce, the more likely it is that you're going to see these negative effects on children. So again, it doesn't seem to be so much the divorce itself that's having the impact as the conflict between the parents is having the impact. There is also another factor, though, which is that very typically what ends up happening in divorces is that mothers are the ones who have most of the custody of children, and mothers' financial circumstances take a terrible nosedive after the divorce. So one thing about divorces is that they have a negative economic effect on both parents, on both fathers and mothers. But they have a particularly strong negative effect, in spite of alimony and child support, they have a particularly strong negative economic effect on mothers. So again, it may not be so much the divorce per se that's having a negative effect on children. It's the fact that divorce is more likely to lead to poverty and isolation. And poverty and isolation are the things that are having negative effects on children. So as we saw before, independently of divorce, children who are being raised by poor single mothers are at more risk than children who aren't. And one of the things that divorce seems to do is turn you into a poor, can turn a relatively advantaged married mother into a poor single mother. Yeah. That's right. Exactly. Yeah. So that seems to be what the research shows. Is there a question? A lot of this is really dealing with children, sort of basically anybody under the age of 18. There's actually one question you might ask is, do divorces affect children differently at different ages? And there is some evidence for that, but it isn't what you might think, which is that it has really strong negative effects when children are young and then doesn't have those negative effects when children get older. In fact, in some cases, there seems to be more difficulty with teenagers whose parents get divorced than there is with very young children, partly because very young children have a chance to adjust to the new circumstance, and it's more disruptive for teenagers, and partly because teenagers are trying to negotiate their own independent lives at that point. So there are differences in the impacts of divorce at different ages, but it doesn't seem to be as simple as saying at one age it has more of a negative impact and then at another age it has less of a negative impact. There's even studies that suggest that adult children whose parents get divorced at that moment suffer more social and emotional trauma than you might expect, given that these are people who are adults who are off on their own and who can cope with the world by themselves. It's actually a kind of interesting thing at Berkeley that some of the Berkeley counselors have told me about, is that very often people have the model of the marriage isn't great, but you're invested in the children, so they'll wait until the children go off to college and then say, okay, this is the time to split up. And one of the things that the counselors at Berkeley tell me is that a lot of the stress and depression and troubles that they see among students are because here's a student who's trying to cope with life for the first time away from home, and that's when the parents decide to divorce, and it still has a big impact on the students, even college students. Okay, yeah. Right. So one of the other things is that even when you aren't talking about a poor single divorced mother, let's say, when you have new families, then putting together those new families is itself something that can be a source of additional stress. So having a step-parent, for instance, involves complexities. Even though that step-parent can invest in the children, that also involves complexities and difficulties. So trying to figure out the step-parents, trying to figure out how they fit into a family that's already there, is another potential source of stress for both the children and the step-parents and the custodian. So one thing that doesn't seem to have a negative effect on children growing up is having lesbian or gay parents. Now, of course, the population that's been studied is relatively small, since it's only relatively recently that we've had large numbers of lesbian and gay parents. But in fact, the evidence seems to suggest that having gay or lesbian parents doesn't at least have any negative effects that anybody can track. In fact, the studies of children of lesbian parents actually suggest that these children may come out better than typical children of heterosexual parents. Which may just be because mommies are so much better than daddies, but I think it's probably not that. It probably reflects the fact that these are couples who are very, very deeply invested in having these children and have chosen to have these children. And in fact, there's not even really any evidence that being raised by lesbian or gay parents makes children more likely to be lesbian or gay themselves. So it doesn't even seem to affect things like the sexual orientation of the children. Another change that's taken place, of course, goes back to what we were talking about before, is that there's been a big change in the number of women in the workplace. So one question that you might ask is, what happens when women are actually working? Now, again, it's important to remember that throughout all of human history, women have been working. And for most of human history, women have actually been contributing as much to the group in terms of the work that they do as men have. But for most of human history, what's happened is that work and child raising and caregiving have gone on at the same time. So if you look in a Mayan Guatemalan village, what you see is women who are doing the work that they do, like gathering and cooking and providing food, but they're doing that at the same time that they're taking care of their babies. So they have babies strapped to their chest, or the babies are running around the children as they're the mothers as they're cooking, so that both the work and the child care are taking place at the same time. So it isn't that for most of human history women were just taking care of children. For most of human history, women and men were both working and taking care of children. It's just that for most of human history, you could do those two things at the same time. So what we're really talking about is what happens when mothers are actually leaving the home, not actually able to do caregiving and child care at the same time. And the general picture seems to be pretty reassuring. So there's some evidence that there may be differences in early cognitive development, but there may be differences in social development and adjustment, but those are balanced by differences in academic competence. And in fact, of course, the thing that really makes the difference, the thing that really mediates these effects of maternal employment, isn't whether or not mothers are working, it's what's happening to children, who's taking care of the children when mothers are working. And that raises another question, which is, what are the effects of childcare? So when mothers are working, the big thing about mothers working is that someone else has to actually be taking care of the children. And one of the ways that in our culture we solve the problem of who takes care of the children is by actually having child care centers, by actually having institutions where children go to be taken care of. And again, it's important to say that's an unusual solution in the history in the course of human history. For most of human history, mothers have been working, but it's been the grandparents and the alloparents and the extended families that have been kicking in to take care of children, not institutions like child care centers that have been taking care of children. And there's another thing to say about trying to understand. So in 2005, more than half of 4 to 6-year-olds were actually in childcare on a regular basis. But another important thing to say about childcare is that childcare is very different in different places and in different times. And yet another thing to say about childcare is that the way that our childcare system currently works is that parents are the ones who have to pay for all of childcare. So outside of small programs like Head Start, we don't provide any sort of general subsidies for childcare. So you're stuck in this dilemma where parents have to put up all the money for childcare, and that means that they can't afford to pay people very much to actually do childcare. So you have people don't want to have jobs that don't pay very much. So you end up with a childcare system where the people who are actually doing the caregiving are likely to be not stable, not highly educated, not very invested in those particular children. And that's not a very good formula for actually having caregiving or having childcare. Yeah. Well, here's a chart suggesting the distribution. So you can see these are the nannies. There's children who are being cared for in the home by a non-relative. And although that's gone up, that's really going up for the richer parents, not for obvious reasons, not for the poorer parents. So especially if you're looking at parents who don't have as much money, they're either sometimes being taken care of by relatives, but they're mostly being taken care of in these center-based programs. And lots of the children are just sort of being taken care of by ad hoc combinations of trying to get a center-based program and relatives and friends and so forth to take care of children. One question you might ask in particular about the effects of childcare is how is it that childcare is going to affect the attachment relationships that we were hearing about last week, which we know are so important for young children. And we should already have had a hint of this. Some early evidence suggested that non-parental childcare might interfere with attachment to parents, that you saw more insecure patterns of attachment among children who were in childcare. However, when you looked at the data more closely, it turns out that that's not actually true. What is true is that the children who are in childcare are expressing their attachment somewhat differently from the children who are not in childcare. So remember, the way that the strange situation works is there's the first part, which is how upset are the babies when the mother leaves, and then the second part, which is how intense is their reunion when the mother comes back. Well, the children in childcare show less distress when the mother leaves, and you might think that's a sign that they're not as well attached. But they show just as much happiness during the reunion part of the attachment situation. And it turns out to be the reunion part that's really important for predicting what children are like. And you can kind of see the rationale for this. If children in childcare both know that mom goes away sometimes, but they also know that eventually mom comes back, and they know that when mom comes back, they're going to be taken care of by other caregivers. And some childcare centers, like Bunny's Childcare Center, for example, they actually get the kids to actually push the parents away as the parents are leaving in the morning. So the children feel that we're the ones who are actually making the parents go away. It's not the parents who are leaving us. And it's true that it's often more traumatic for the parents to actually have to lose the attachment figure than it is for the children in childcare centers. So there isn't evidence systematically that there are these differences in attachment. And again, if you think about this evolutionary picture, human beings seem to have been designed to be attached to a wide range of figures who can be caregivers. And much the same sort of story seems to be true when you look at adjustment and social behavior. So overall, there doesn't seem to be a big difference in children's cognitive or linguistic development based on childcare. And in fact, when you look at poor children in high-quality centers, you see a very consistent pattern of positive effects on cognitive development. So especially for poor children, and especially with high-quality care, you see these positive effects. But of course, the thing that's the biggest predictor is how high-quality those childcare actually is. So the thing that really determines whether or not you see cognitive and linguistic advances or drawbacks in children is whether or not the centers are actually high quality. And in fact, the reason I wasn't here last Wednesday was because I was visiting Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Tulsa, Oklahoma is Oklahoma in general is one of the few states in the country, rather surprisingly, that actually is trying to implement universal preschool. And the great difficulty that they're having in implementing universal preschool is trying to figure out how, given the money that you can have preschool that has these kinds of high quality standards. So the same kind of dilemma that you see in private childcare, which is how do you pay the caregivers enough but not charge the parents too much, is a dilemma that comes up even when you're talking about government-based childcare. How can you actually have enough money to provide this kind of high quality education? And I was actually there trying to give them advice about how you could thread the needle of having high quality childcare and what that high quality childcare actually meant. In Oklahoma? Yeah. Well, it's not just in Tulsa. In Tulsa, they have a whole separate visiting program. But Oklahoma is an example. In fact, if you heard Barack Obama, when he gave his latest budget, it's supposed to have a whole program of universal pre-K. But Oklahoma is supposed to be one of the examples of how that's actually possible. Okay, so next time we'll talk about influences of peers.